it is time. And I'm generally the guy that fights that tooth and nail. You should always try and win, and I don't believe in tanking, and blah, blah, blah. You've heard me a million times. But they are due for, some, as you said, bleeding. I guess that's a good way to put it. I just think it's going to be impossible for them to bottom out, to really do that thing. Because there's just, I know this sounds silly when I say it, but there's too much talent.
Yeah, right.
There's too much talent to bottom out.
Right.
They don't, they're in that spot where they just don't have enough talent to compete at a high level, but they have too much to bottom out, and too much that's tied up in no movements. And that I think that, boy, it would take a lot to really have them do the thing. And, do you want them to do the thing? Like that thing? Do you want to do it, quote unquote, the right way? It's interesting. You look at the standings.
I mean, you're talking about, when you say the right way, ripping it apart.
Ripping it apart. And
they won't do that.
And going through what teams in the league are now doing, which are these long draft and develop rebuilds. And it's, the three teams, there are three teams that are creeping up on you. Detroit, Ottawa, and it pains me to say it, the Canadiens. And all three of those teams have been going through this long sort of slog of draft, suck, draft, suck, draft, suck. I'm typing on the fly, so that's why I'm sort of hesitating here. I'm just looking up. Detroit, for example. Do you know the last time they won a playoff run?
Probably 10 years ago.
2013.
Yeah.
I would have guessed 10 years.
12 years. They made the playoffs and lost in the first round in 14, 15, and 16. And since then,
well, they're the hottest team in hockey right now.
They've finished seventh in seventh place, fifth place, seventh, eighth, seventh, sixth, seventh, fifth, and seventh. And they've been drafting for now 8 years. And finally, they might be knocking at the door of a playoff berth. Ottawa, I'll give you Ottawa here in a second. And it's something similar. Are you ready to do that? Do you want them to do that?
They won't do it. Neely and Sweeney would never see the end of it. I mean, they'd be gone long before that. So when he says retool, I kind of know what he means.
The last time the Senators won a playoff round, I'm sorry, Mazz, was 2017. So since then they've finished.
I know who that was against.
Yeah, I think it was you.
Yeah.
They won they beat you in the first round, then they lost, then they went to the conference final. But anyway, there's 8 teams in the division. Here's where they've finished since: 7th, 8th, 7th, 6th, 7th, 6th, 7th, and now they're creeping up. They're a couple points behind you with games in hand. And okay, so that is, these teams are losing a half decade to doing nothing but losing and drafting. And now they're just a half decade, 7-8 years later, coming out of it. Is that the right way to do it? And should they be prepared to do it?
Go ahead, Murray.
I'm just of the belief you can only be in purgatory for so long, which is what they are. It's why I call, the Steelers the football Bruins. Like, I can deal with 4, maybe 5 years of that. You get into the playoffs, maybe you win a round or two, and that's fine. But if it just feels like stagnant, when you start to get to 7-8 years, like, you got to shake it up. And if you got to go to the bottom for a little while, you hope it's not as long as 7-8 years, and it's that kind of thing in reverse. If you can do it in 3-4, great. But I think it's worth taking a shot, because what you're doing just isn't working, and it's getting stale.
I mean, you're not going to – I don't think you can suck as bad as those teams have sucked. I don't think you're finishing in 7th and 8th place. There's just – unless you trade everybody, and I don't know how you do that. I don't think that happens. Montreal, if you take out the phony COVID year, right, when they had the
right.
Canadian division and all of that, if you take that out, they had not won a playoff round
10 years
since 2015.
Yeah,
and that time they finished 6th, 6th, 4th, 5th, 8th, 8th, 8th. They're coming off of 3 straight last place finishes. So it's like.
Now, them and Buffalo are like, they're your good examples of like,
okay.
don't be them.
And Buffalo is still down there.
Yeah, right.
Buffalo.
They're never going to get it
Buffalo's
right.
still in last.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, these 3 examples I just gave you, Detroit, Ottawa, and Montreal,
they're starting to develop.
Are showing some signs of life. Not that they're like at the top of the league or anything like that. I'm just telling you, I think on point percentage, they might all be ahead of you right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Detroit's in the wild card, I believe, the last I checked, and they just beat Florida last night.
Okay, and we're not halfway through the year, and they got a long way to go, and who knows?
But they're frisky.
Okay, all I'm saying is That's what teams are doing now. Is that what it's time to do? And I'll see you, Bruins fans, in 2030. See you in the year 2030 when you start even sniffing.
I'm for it.
When you start sniffing the 8 seed. I mean, what it means, Murray. I mean,
I'm sick of these faces.
As a professional talk show host and a fan of hockey, right?
Yeah.
It's basically 5 years off the radar.
Right. Forget about them.
I mean, I'm not going to talk about a last place hockey team. I'm not going to watch I'm not going to watch a last place hockey team. I'm not watching that. It's tough enough to watch this.
But this middling morphine drip of takes that we just been like, oh, yeah, no, it still comes. But deep down, like, it's just not going to change. Like, again, I can do with that for 4 or 5 years. When it's gone to the point where it's got with the Bruins, like, nothing's going to change.
Okay, but
so you need some upheaval
So
here.
you'd rather have 5 years of last place?
I think it's worth taking that risk. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean,
we'll
look,
do more Force Felger fun. We'll rag on them a little bit more. We'll find a way. Like, I just think it's time for them to change.
So I'll stop talking selfishly as a talk show host. I'm a hockey fan. I do enjoy coming home and watching a game. I do. I enjoy that.
And most of the season's been real rough.
But I'm a Bruins fan. I'm not a NHL fan. I don't watch the league. I just don't. And I don't know if I would. I think I just sort of like it would be what it was here, and even for me, that time that
the bleak mid-aughts,
the early 2000s, the mid till we got to.
They were non-existent.
To me, like the rebirth was 2008 when they lost to Montreal in the first round. Game 6, first round, 2008. I remember going to that game being like, oh, God, I've missed this. And that was sort of when they came back. But from I don't know, 05, whatever, there was there was a lost decade. They were nothing.
No, they were a zero.
You want to do that again?
I mean, I don't want to do it with any of the teams. And look, it's the seeing a good hockey game on a Tuesday, Thursday night during the winter is dynamite. It is dynamite. The way they need to do it, if they can, is use the Celtics model of get someone else to suck for you and be decent in the interim.
Right. So,
but to do that, it's going to have to be Pasternak, McAvoy, or Swayman.
Back to your point. It's time to bleed a little bit.
Yeah, so something like that.
I don't think they can bleed out, but I think it's time to bleed a little bit. And hopefully, and I think you're right, I would want draft picks. And I'd try to get draft picks from bad teams.
So that's my compromise.
Send Pasternak to a lousy team. He ain't going to change the fortunes of a lousy team. There's 14 million turnovers.
Rather than blowing it up, can you show me you can cut yourself a little bit and make it hurt? Like, they've been unwilling to do that. So, I'm not going to be impressed if they trade Trent Frederick or, Charlie Coyle. Whatever. Those are fringe moves.
Nothing moves.
That'll help them a little bit to ensure that Cam and Sweeney get to have their sweet jobs. You need a real change here. Make it hurt for a little bit. Move one of these big names if you can.
So this conversation's on the table, especially after Neely said what he said. And a lot of people like Mazz think they've already made up their minds. They're doing this thing. It's just a matter of when and how deep they cut.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Felger and Mazz here. For more Bruins analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.